Thanks, David.
Right, we're live on YouTube. And we're on time.
Thank you. Thank you, fans. Never going to be allowed to forget this.
No.
I'll be on at 9 o'clock next week.
Yeah, we believe you. Okay. You ready to go?
Yep.
Just waiting for one or two more schools to join. Right. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to week 9 of Teaching Live. We're all present and correct, and you might be able to see David, but David's keeping his microphone muted because he's got builders next door who are seemingly demolishing the house next door by the sound of things, and his dog's getting a bit stressed. So David's going to be here, but he's going to keep quiet. Pi, on the other hand, you're here on time and we're ready to rock and roll.
We are, absolutely. I thought we'd just start off with the subjunctive game. The subjunctive is
what the subjunctive was, Pi, then I might be able to join you in the game.
The subjunctive.
Explain to me.
Oh, I knew you were going to ask me what is the subjunctive. So it's a very antiquated way of expressing yourself. It's to do with the verb, and it's where you use the verb to express statements that are imagined or contrary to the fact. Well, that doesn't help you very much, does it? It's where you say, basically, if I were a millionaire, I'd buy my parents a house. Now, you're not really a millionaire, but it's sort of talking about what you would do if you were. If I were a millionaire, if I were the king, if I were teacher of this class, we would have all our lessons would be 5 minutes long. Sometimes used to convey a wish or a request. I wish that my best friend were still living in the city as me. It's that word that's creeping in again with that one. Now we've got two here. The first one is, if I were in charge, I would. Well, I'm not really in charge, but this is what I would like to do. If I were in charge, if I were king, I would. If I were head teacher, I would. So let's try a couple of those, and then we'll do the other one. The king requires that. So if I were in charge, I would have free donkey rides for all children during the summer holidays and all beaches.
If I were in charge, I would ban prawn cocktail crisps.
If I were in charge, I would make sure that all children had lessons in dragonology.
If I were in charge, I would make PE lessons extremely tough.
Ooh, if I were in charge, I would change the SATs so that children would be tested on piratology, dragonology, and unicornology. As you know, 3 very useful things.
If I were in charge, if I were in charge, I would make everybody ride their bicycles everywhere all the time.
Well, that's quite a nice one. If I were in charge, I would, following that health line, John, I would ban trans fats. Now, the trans fats, I think I'm right in saying, are the type of fat that is very bad for people. So I would ban trans fats, and I would also ban sugar in most foods. I think the odd biscuit or a bit of cake isn't, is fine, or the odd chocolate bar. But when I go into supermarkets, if you look on even things like, stop yawning. This is serious point. If you look on things like ham, you wouldn't have thought it, but the sugar, they put sugar into ham. So I would ban most sugars in those situations because you just don't need it.
If I were in charge, I would ban old authors from pontificating about nonsense on the internet.
If I were in charge, you're going to get banned now, John. Okay, so that's the if I were in charge. It's a nice one to do. If I were head teacher or king or something like that, or queen, of course, or president, what would you do? Prime minister would be good. If I were prime minister, I would. And some of them can be fun things like we were doing. Some of them can be a bit more serious things like the sugars and the trans fats and the making sure that more people rode on bicycles, etc., and we didn't pollute the air. So you can have some serious ones, have some fun ones, but it's got to be if I were, which is an unusual way of speaking. The other one I've got for us is the king requires that, or the head teacher requires that, or the queen requires that, or let's do prime minister, John. The prime minister requires that. So you start us off.
The prime minister requires that anyone attending a party should do so on their own.
The prime minister requires that all teachers should arrive in school wearing only items of red clothing. Why he requires this, I have no idea at all.
Well, is it Red Nose Day, or it has been recently?
It has been recently Red Nose Day, and that was, I nearly said requires every teacher wears red nose, but
the prime minister requires that he be provided with tea and cake at 11 o'clock precisely every morning.
The prime minister requires that all school children should be offered the option of ice cream every lunchtime with either with hot chocolate sauce, one of my favorite things.
So that kind of shoots your anti-sugar rant down completely there, Pi.
It does, yes.
The prime minister requires that. The prime minister requires that. The prime minister requires that it only rains overnight and not during the daytime.
The prime minister requires that every school should have a garden, which includes flowers, vegetables, and an area for a school pig.
The prime minister requires that the prime minister requires that Southampton Football Club should win the Premier League every year.
Prime Minister requires that every school should be given £20,000 a year in which can only be spent on books, comics, graphic novels, and other types of reading that children enjoy. Okay, I think everyone's got the idea. So 4 minutes on the clock. I think, first of all, the if I were in charge, or if I were king for the day, or whatever. And then after 2 minutes, John, go over to the prime minister requires that.
Right. So I'll just pull up the screen and go that's the wrong screen, and so is that one. And that is, whoops, that's the correct screen. So if I were, or the Prime Minister requires that, if I were in charge. 4 minutes on the clock, starting now. Okay, that's time up. So we'll go straight. Whoops, I've just started the timer again. We'll stop that right away and we'll go to this morning's page, which is the 11 o'clock session under sessions, this morning's grammar session, and onto the Padlet activity.
Now, of course, the subjunctive mood, where you say, if I were, or the king requires that sort of mood is a very formal way of speaking, quite an unusual way of speaking. You won't hear many people talk like that or write like that. So today is all about formal and informal language. And of course, depending on your purpose for writing, you would change from formal to informal. So if you're writing a diary just for yourself, you could do that informally. If you're writing a letter to a friend, that could be fairly informal. However, if you're in school writing an essay in history, you'd want that to be formal. Most schoolwork is formal. One time where we use informality in school in our writing is when we're writing a story and we have somebody speaking. And then, because people do not always talk formally, then we might actually have some informality in the speech. So the challenge in this first one, we are in a formal setting. So formal setting would be something like a school classroom, or you're in a queue in the bank, or you've gone for a job interview, something or other like that. And we've got a list here of things that are fairly informal, and we're going to change them to formal standard English. Standard English is the language that we use when we're in school and we're speaking formally. And then when we speak at home, we may well say things slightly differently that aren't in standard English. Let's have a look at these ones. See ya. Now, that evidently is not a very formal way of speaking. If you were saying goodbye to the head teacher at the gate, you wouldn't go, see ya. Well, you might do, but it would be frowned upon, I think. You would probably say something like, good afternoon, Mr. Sutton. Have a good evening and I'll see you tomorrow morning. So you would turn it into something a bit more formal. What would you say, John, if you were say you were saying goodbye to the head teacher? You wouldn't go see you and do a high five. That wouldn't be appropriate for the setting because it's formal. What would you say, do you think?
So yeah, I would probably say goodbye, sir, or goodbye, miss, or goodbye, Mrs. Sutton, or
yes.
I would address them formally.
Yes, exactly. Wouldn't say see you, mate, to your teacher. That would be fairly unlikely.
And I think it's very disrespectful to speak to people informally like that unless you're in an informal conversation.
Yes, you're recognizing the situation, and certainly with older people. So when my granddad, they would expect a more formal tone, and that was just the way they were, John. So you knew you had to adopt a more formal tone with them, and that's just how they expect. It would have been rude to have done anything else. So if we look at the other ones, we've got I didn't see nothing. Now that is very much Gloucestershire. I didn't see nothing. And what would that be if that was formal? Let's look at the next one. I could have eaten the donut. I seen them donuts. They was running and it weren't me what has done it. So these are all not quite in standard English, and they're certainly not formal. So the job on the Padlet is to rewrite them as if you were talking in a more formal manner. So you've got to obviously maintain the what is being said, but it's rather like a translation. You've got to turn it into them's the rules.
I'll put another one up for you.
Yeah, certainly. Them's the rules. These are the rules and regulations. Or this is the way to talk formally or write formally. So we're off now, I think, David, if you can hear us. I don't know if you were able to put up the 5 challenges, the number of the sentences on there, but I can see we've got 180 people on the go. So, right, fellas, up and at 'em. Right, you might say that if you were a parrot, but you wouldn't say that if you were in a formal situation. You would say, okay. Well, even okay is a bit informal. Okay, everybody, it's time that we got on with the job.
Serena and Harry, don't forget to put your school, please. I did not see anything. Goodbye. I could have ate the donut. And that last one, you
Sharp
need to do that
intake.
again.
Yeah, sharp intake of breath on that one. It's a tricky one. I bunged that one in, John, because I thought, ooh, this will catch them out. Now, Toby, you've written, I did not see anything. That must be an error, because Finley's got, I did not see anything. I did not see anything. That's most people are getting that one. I have not seen anything. I think with the I have not, I think I'd probably want you sticking to the did not.
One of my absolute pet hates there, I've just posted, Pi. Off of. Get your backside off of that chair.
Yes, that's an unpleasant one, isn't it?
Yeah, I know it's perfectly, and a lot of it's people say that a lot, off of, but
It's wrong, isn't it?
not correct.
Now, Molly and Oliver, you said, I will see you tomorrow, bye. Now, bye is obviously slightly more informal than goodbye. Well, certainly when I was at school, you had to say good afternoon, Mrs. Jenkins, or sir, or miss.
Now, see you tomorrow. Compare that one with Molly and Teddy's I will see you tomorrow. And see you tomorrow is a fragment. It's not a full sentence.
Yes, that's important. And Romner and Rika, see you. That's informal. It's sort of thing, and same with Anna, see you later. That's informal, and you know it's informal because you put the question mark, the exclamation mark. So have a think about that one. You need to do that one again. It's the sort of thing you might shout to a friend, see ya, see you later. So see you is definitely informal. It's not a full sentence apart from anything else. I've just seen somebody write about them donuts.
Yeah.
That is J. Seal from AHPS. That word them is not formal.
Those it's a common error, and that's down to the way people speak, that one.
Yes, a lot of it is we might say that at home or with our mates, but when we're in a formal situation, we need to know it's said like this or written like this. So it's not I see them donuts. Now, Mia and Veronica at St. Edward's, you've got to decide, is there a more formal way of saying goodbye? Goodbye is polite enough.
Bye definitely isn't.
Yes. I mean, certainly at school, we were trained to say, so Lily and John said, see you later, goodbye. That obviously is informal. So that's incorrect. Well done, Ted, with your donut.
We'll come out of the Padlet. We need to move on, Pi. So we'll go on to the second Padlet activity. So we'll shift briefly from Padlet 1 to Padlet 2.
Right, what we've got here is that was distinct sentences with common mistakes in them. And obviously we all need to be able to spot those mistakes. I say they're mistakes, they are mistakes if you are in a formal situation. Now this is a bit different because it's a paragraph. So you're writing a story in class fairly formal setting, of course, classroom. So we expect standard English. So the game is to rewrite the paragraph, but do it sentence by sentence using formal standard English. We was stood outside the bakery. We was stood. I'm not happy with that, John. We were standing. Is that how you would do it?
Well, I would, when you're talking about creative writing, Pi, I would remove the was, were altogether and just say we stood outside the bakery.
So we got two options here. We stood outside the bakery.
But we were standing outside the bakery would be equally correct.
Equally correct, but stylistically, you think we stood outside the bakery has got more punch. Yeah. So you might be changing words, but you might be taking words out.
And you've got to be careful with the tense as well, because we was stood outside the bakery suggests that it was in the past.
Past tense, yes.
So if you then changed it to we are standing outside the bakery, you'd actually be incorrect, because it's not we are, it's we were. So you'd got to keep your tense correct as well as making the turning it into standard English. So we was stood outside the bakery, we were standing outside the bakery, or we stood outside the bakery. Either of those would work.
So it's a little bit more complex than one might imagine. You might have to change words. You might have to take words out. And there might be a case for adding some words in. So the activity is to turn those into standard English. Do it sentence by sentence or a couple of sentences at a time.
And the thing is, this is informal, but it's quite easy to understand. So you've just got to be careful with the language. So let's see how we're getting on. So we stood outside the bakery. We were standing outside the bakery. Yeah, both of those were okay. For once, we did nothing wrong.
Is it we did nothing wrong, or?
For once, we actually done nothing wrong. For once, we actually did nothing wrong. I'm not sure about actually. It works. You could use it. Now, somebody's put, we were stood outside the bakery. Now, that's not correct. Jacob from Belmont. It's either we were standing or we were, or we stood. Not we were stood. That's not quite the correct tense there. So some people say we were stood standing. which is an interesting colloquialism when you're trying to get both past tenses of stood in the same phrase. So we were standing or we stood, not we were stood.
Remember, you can change words. I said to Gary that the donuts were tasty. Now, that's an interesting one, John, because how do you know they're tasty if you're just looking at them? So were tasty. You might want to change that word were.
You could change it to look, couldn't you?
Exactly, yes.
But he could be referring to the fact that he's had donuts in the past from the same shop.
Yes.
Now then, Finley from Rolvenden. I spoke to Gary that those donuts were delicious. Not sure that works. I spoke to Gary. I told Gary that the donuts those donuts were delicious would work. I spoke to Gary and told him that those donuts were delicious would also work. I said to Gary that the donuts were tasty. It isn't wrong. Serena and Harry. I said to Gary that the donuts were tasty. I told Gary that the donuts were tasty. I think is better.
Or looked tasty, as you said earlier.
Yeah.
it does imply that if you say were tasty, it implies that you've already had one.
Yeah, and Jude from Fairburn, I spoke to Gary that those donuts were delicious. Delicious, possibly more formal and tasty. Yeah, I agree with that one. But again, I spoke to Gary and I told Gary that those donuts were delicious. I think told explains what's happening a little bit better.
We were both very tempted. He said he was not going to get involved. And Gary and I walked home.
Yeah, we were both really tempted. That's fine. He said that he wasn't getting involved. Now, he wasn't getting involved. I've lost where it was. Who said it? He wasn't getting. Esther and Orlaith from St Edwards. He said that he wasn't getting involved. Was not getting involved is shortened. Where are you on the use of adjectives in formal English to shorten a word? Pi.
Do you mean omission?
Yes. So he wasn't getting involved.
Yeah, it should be he was not getting involved.
So if you'd written a book, and would your editor have corrected that?
It depends on the tone of the rest of it.
Yes.
If you're trying to be formal, you
Yes.
don't abbreviate.
Yeah, you wouldn't abbreviate a word.
So, Sienna and Maxim. So me and Gary went home. Now that's an interesting one. Gary went home. If I take Gary out of it, you've written so me went home, and that obviously isn't right. So, but
if you'd have said
your ending is for once, we had done nothing wrong. And I like that.
Seb from Fairburn, I spoke to Gary and said those donuts blew my socks off. Very informal indeed, and I would not use that in a formal setting. You wouldn't use that in a formal setting. So my friend and I headed home. Went home, headed home. Yeah, it works.
Headed home, I'll take that.
Yeah.
How are we doing time-wise, John?
Right, well, you need to come out of the Padlet. And we will move back to the session page. Which is just there. And we'll look at do we want to do the PowerPoint now?
Yeah, let's have a look at the PowerPoint, and then we could go on to the live jotcast and end with the blog challenge. So we're thinking about formal and informal. And obviously when you're writing a story and have speech, that might be informal, depending on who is speaking, what they're saying. But it's all about audience and purpose. So we change our language, we change how we speak, what we say, depending on audience means who we're talking to. So if we are talking to Prince, he's not a prince anymore, the king, I would be extremely formal in the way I spoke. But if I was chatting to you or David over a curry, we would not be using we wouldn't use the subjunctive. That would be for certain, because it's a very pompous, formal way of speaking. So we change our language depending on who we're talking with. That's the audience. At home with friends, we talk informally. I had a wicked time. We did actually at the weekend. We had a wicked time, John. We went to Brighton, where it was the Neighbours. You know Neighbours. You know I'm a great fan of Neighbours on TV.
Yeah, no, I meant to ask you about this, Pi, because my sister-in-law is a huge Neighbours fan, and she went to the Neighbours event in Manchester. And I meant to ask you, were you not going to it?
Yeah, no, we went to it. Yeah, we went to it down in Brighton. There was 3,000 people,
Wow.
over 3,000 neighbours fans there. And they interviewed members of the cast, and we saw film clips of big incidents that had happened. And even at the end, I found myself standing up with the crowd, John, and singing the neighbours' song. So there you go. And I had a wicked time, I can tell you. It was very good. But of course, in school and with official all school writing and in school speech, when we're in class and any official letters, of course, we talk more formally. So I wouldn't say I had a really wicked time or a dead good time. I'd say I had a really enjoyable time. Thank you. So we're adjusting what we say and how we say it according to our audience and indeed the purpose why we're speaking. So the second one here is building on that one. We use formal language when we're writing in school and to anyone that we do not know. It would be rude if you were writing to something for somebody or to somebody and you adopted a very informal tone. You might get it completely wrong. And if they were like my grandpa and grandma, they would consider it very rude if you didn't adopt a formal tone until you know somebody. Then it might become more informal. So 3 key principles, John. If we're being formal, we don't use contractions. In other words, isn't becomes is not. And you can see that the apostrophe there is exactly where the O should be. We use very formal or technical vocabulary. So dead wicked becomes very good. So that's our local dialect. So a dialect is how we speak in our locality. So in Gloucestershire, we speak slightly, this isn't accent. Accent is how you say, how you pronounce the words. This is actually what you say, but the dialect, so there are certain words. For instance, up your way, John, what do you call alleyways?
So where I grew up, which was in Northamptonshire, alleyways were called jitties.
You see, I've never heard of that. We have down here laggers, and the laggers, as you know, that comes actually, there's a canal in the valley, and the laggers were the people who lay on the top of the boats and moved them through the tunnels by doing that. But we also have snickets as well.
Yeah, we have snickets up north.
Yeah. So
those kind of, so snickets, jitties, laggers, alleyways. So there's, we had again, when I grew up in Kettering, whenever we used the word very, we would change it to weak, which is a really strange one. That were weak good.
That's really strange.
It is. It's really odd. That were weak good, meaning that was very good. Or that were weak bad. That was very bad.
Gloucestershire people use the word look all the time. So they would say, I was going down the road, look. We're not looking at anything. Look, I went up to the shops, look. And it's just a weird way of doing it, but that's the local dialect. That's how we speak. So around the country, we all speak slightly differently, but formal English is the same for wherever you are. It's used around the world. So it's like an agreed pattern of language so that if you are in another part of the world, everybody can understand you. And of course, we use standard English, which is that pattern of English language that is international. So we don't say, all right, we done it. We would say, we did it. Formal language can be spoken in any accent. We all have different accents. That's how we pronounce the words. So the accent is how you say the words, not what you say. Okay, so on we go. I think there's a little bit more here, a couple more slides. Standard English, so that's the language that we use in school writing and when we're writing to people we don't know and when we're talking with people that we don't know and in certain formal situations. So non-standard is on the left and standard is on the right. So non-standard, it were right good. And you can hear that that's fairly informal, very informal. It means it was very good. So that would be the standard way of saying it. We was dead chuffed. So we were very pleased. I ain't feeling good. I am not feeling good. I goes down to them shops. That's a Gloucestershire. I goes down to them shops, right? Which means I went down to the shops, and yeah, she sings nice. Yes, she sings nicely, or she sings very well.
And it's also important, Pi, when you're talking to people who who have learned English as a foreign language, because they will have learned standard English. So if you're talking to somebody and you said, well, that was sick, meaning that was really good. And if you talk to somebody who hasn't learned non-standard English, they will completely misunderstand you if you use informal language sometimes. So that's another reason why you must use formal language in certain settings, otherwise people won't understand you.
Yes, it is why we use formal language in schools, so that everybody at least has got a language we all understand. And as soon as you become informal, it could cause confusion. For instance, if you said, "Oh, year 6, you were on fire this afternoon," well, you might well think, where are the flames? Let's run for it. So formal English, that's why we use it. Standard English, we use it in class. And our last one is just a reminder about audience and purpose. Audience is who's listening to us or who we're writing for. The purpose is our reason. We might be writing to entertain or inform or instruct or persuade. And obviously, as you're writing or talking, how you use language to persuade is different to how you tell a story. So we change what we say and how we say it depending on the audience and the purpose. And we might speak or write formally or informally, depending on who we are trying to communicate with and why. That's a little bit about formal language, John. And we could get on to the live writing Jotcast, our final activity here. So we've got to imagine that somebody's making a formal speech to the local council. Now, the council, of course, every town and every area, and certainly every city, has a council. And the council basically get money from the government, from our taxes. They get money. So your local council in Birmingham or wherever you are will have a pot of money, and they have to spend that money wisely on things like roads, lighting, for instance, the street lighting, and other aspects of running the area that you're in. So somebody's standing up making a formal speech. So if you scroll down a wee bit, John, just so I can read that one. So the formal speech.
I've got an old version of the Jotcast on my screen. Let's have a look.
All right. How are you doing?
Not any text. Go back.
That's David trying to communicate because he's got builders.
And go back in.
There we go.
Nope, I still don't have any text. Right, I'm going to just close the site down completely a second.
I've got text. I'll read it while you're doing that, John.
Yeah, okay.
So this person stands up at the meeting and says, right, I'm going to tell you all of what we think. The roads round here are dead scary. Them cars what go too fast should be got rid of. Look, this ain't the first time we've told you about this, right? Some kiddie's going to get it if you lot do now. It's dead dangerous. What with them lot speeding? So as you can hear, it's certainly not formal, the way in which I said that. And the activity then is going to be, that's weird that you can't find that, John.
No, I'm just going to make David the host on the session. Can you do that?
Because I've got that on mine.
Share your screen, David.
So that is it's a bit odd. And I imagine if I can get it on mine, most schools can get it on theirs. So the activity obviously is to take it sentence by sentence, and you've got to turn it into a fluent but formal presentation. So you wouldn't start, right, I'm going to tell you all what we think. So you would probably say, good afternoon. I would like to inform the council about about our proposition or our reasons.
Yeah.
So I like that first one. So you could crack on with the second one, which is the roads round here are dead scary. Well, you might say that to your mum, but you certainly wouldn't say it if you were talking to the council in a formal situation. So you've got to communicate the right idea that the roads are scary, but you've got to say that sentence in formal language. Okay, I think we're ready to go, David. Everyone can see that. So start with that second one. The roads around here are dead scary. You've got to turn that into formal language. And remember, the sentences need to flow. Don't do them all at once. You can do them one or two at a time. Now, Ingrid, I don't think right is a formal way of beginning. Charmaine, I'm going to tell you what we all think. So Elliot and Charlie, I'm not convinced by the right at the beginning.
And if you are going to put right at the beginning, you need a comma, like Mushroom Hallsville has used.
But I think Rahul's
even the bet is better. Yeah.
Yes, more formal. Good afternoon. I would like to tell you what we're going to think.
What I think. I would like to tell you what we're going to think is a little bit presumptive, Pi.
Yes, I stand corrected.
Yes, I think you'd be better off saying, just as Ruby's done, I'm going to tell you what I think, rather than put right in front of it. If you're going to be properly formal, you could say good afternoon or good morning or whatever, or hello, I'm going to tell you what we think. Yeah, that would be okay as well.
I like way Warren has got in, I'm going to inform you.
Now, okay, Alex from Hallsville, okay, I'm going to tell you what we think definitely not. So okay would be is informal.
But Kian from St Wilfrid's, good afternoon. I'm going to tell you what we think about our town. So you're sort of introducing the subject. I think you're going well with that one.
And Gracie and Connor from WPS, I'm going to tell you what we think should happen.
The roads around here are not that safe. I'm liking that.
Yeah, and the roads around here are scary, are really scary.
Frightening, John?
It's a little bit informal. I would say the roads around here are very dangerous or
are frightening and dangerous, are dangerous and therefore frightening.
Yeah, I don't think I'd use the word scary. Isn't wrong. It's formal English, but I think if I was being super polite and formal, I would, because scary is what you're feeling. Whereas as if you were stating a fact, you could say the roads around here are dangerous, and not what you feel about them.
I like Ava's. Good afternoon. I'm here to inform you as the council what we think about. You could extend it a wee bit. Tiana and Maxim, the cars are around, the cars are going too fast. Look at that word too. You need to have a think about how to spell that.
Yeah, is it two or two? That's the question you need to ask yourself.
Now you've written in yours, some child is going to get hurt if you don't slow down, but it's not the council necessarily who's driving quickly. So that needs thinking about.
Right. So David, if you hand back the control to me, I've actually got my page refreshed now and correct. So I can
I'm liking Freddie. I like one innocent child will face the consequences, probably a comma, if you do not do anything, or if you do not act. How about that? Or if you do not take the correct measures. RV, I think it's still quite informal. The roads around this place are quite scary. So this place, by that you mean the local town. So you'd have to have, Harvey, something along the lines of the roads in our town are dangerous.
I like Logan. The roads in our area are far too dangerous. That works well. Now, Molly and Oliver, dear Mrs. and Misters, that would be fine if you were writing a letter, but dear Mr. and Mrs. If you used Mr. or Mrs., you need to put their name. So if it's a group of people, you would say, dear sir and dear. How would you say if you're writing a letter to a group, Pi? Dear all, dear everyone, dear. It's difficult actually. No, actually, what you'd say, dear members of the council, or dear members of the
or dear local council, or dear councillors.
Yes, you refer to the body that you are writing to. Dear members of the community, dear. You wouldn't say dear Mr. and Mrs. It is that's a difficult one, Molly and Oliver, but well done for giving that a go.
It is a little tricky because we don't in school necessarily hear a lot of very formal language. And of course, if you've not heard a lot of formal language, it's then quite difficult to use formal language because you don't quite know how the pattern goes.
Yes, it is difficult. So if you think about if you were writing a letter to the governing body of the school, you would either write it to Mr. Smith or Mrs. Smith as chair of the governors. So you write, dear Mrs. Smith, chair of the governing body, or you would write to the whole governors, in which case you'd write, dear governing body. You wouldn't write, dear Mr. Smith, Mrs. Aloysius, Mr. and list them all. You would refer to the group as whatever the group's name was when you were doing that. It's quite, that is difficult to get it right, and it's something that we do in class. Sometimes we try to write persuasive letters to people to persuade them of our opinion sometimes, but it's not something we probably practice enough, perhaps. Right, let's go back to the original. Let's go through it then, Pi. Let's have a quick thing. So, right, I'm going to tell you all what we think around what we all think. How would you do that one?
I'd say something. If I was imagine myself in the council and I'm presenting, I'd say, good afternoon, members of the council. I would like to take this opportunity to present to you what we believe about the roads and speeding in our town. The roads around here are extremely dangerous and the situation is frightening. Them cars won't go too fast. There are too many cars that speed, and we need to ensure that this no longer happens. This is not the first time that we have raised this issue with the council. If you do not legislate to curtail speeding in the local area.
Curtail, that's a good word, Pi. What does
it is a good word, yes. I was pleased with that one. Curtail means stop. Then an innocent child is certain to be injured or possibly even killed, particularly if you do not take the relevant action. It's dead dangerous, what with them lot speeding. It is undoubtedly extremely dangerous with too many cars speeding, and this must surely be something that the council will take action on.
Well, very well rounded up, Pi.
Something along those lines.
So Ashley and Malachi, those cars are going too fast and should be got rid of. Should be banned, should be stopped, but got rid of is a bit informal.
Yes, it is.
I like this one, Freddie from Rolvenden. One innocent child
Yes.
will face the consequences if you do not do anything. Yeah, that's really good.
I thought that was extremely good. Well, shall we go to the final bit, John?
Yes, indeed. So let's come out of
Your
there,
lunch.
go on to the blog challenge.
Yeah, lunch is coming.
Right. So what have we got here then, Pi?
Well, the task really is this needs printing out, underline the formal sentences, then rewrite each one, making them sound as formal as rewrite each informal one to make it sound as formal as the rest of the email or letter. Okay, I'm writing to inform you about the upcoming events on the local calendar. Now, does that sound formal or informal, John?
That sounds quite formal to me.
Yeah, so you could underline that one. That's a formal one. Now, if it's informal, we've got to rewrite it. So what about this next one? There are some dead good things in the pipeline.
Yes, so that's definitely informal. So you could replace that with there are some very good things in the pipeline. Or
Okay,
something
good
like
things, upcoming events. There are some extremely exciting events that we have on our that will be coming to the town shortly, something like that. So you've got to stop the formal in the informal and correct the informal. First, there'll be a procession through the town consisting of a wide variety of contributions. Anyone involved must take good care not to get in the way of the crowds, or there will be an almighty row. And it's interesting because some of that, I think, that second sentence, some of it's formal, but some of it's a little bit informal.
that.
So it's not always necessarily one thing or the other. It's a matter of tone. The mayor will judge the best baby competition. While that is going on, you could get yourself down to Mr. Chippy's and grab a bite. And again, some of that is formal, but I think some of it might be informal. After that, there will be a dance display in the town square. If you're watching, please stand back so you don't get in the way. The market will be open all afternoon. Finally, the firework display will be held in Prince's Park at exactly 6. We hope you all have a wicked time. Yours faithfully, Billy Bob Kramer.
Okay, so that's so rewrite. So you can leave the formal parts of that letter exactly as they are, identify the informal parts and turn it into a fully formal letter. So what you could do, of course, is do the reverse.
Yeah, turn it all informal.
Turn it all informal, which might be quite fun as well. So have a go at doing that as well if you want to, and turn it into your local dialect, how you would speak where you live. That would also be fun, but that's an extra. What we really want is people to concentrate on the formal writing, so that it's really the important thing about all this formal informal is knowing when to use that, when the formal is the correct thing to be using, isn't it, Pi?
Exactly, and being able to spot what is formal, what is informal, and then change the informal to being formal. So it's you being able to write or speak formally when required. Yes,
absolutely. And it's not always the most obvious situation. So if you've got somebody, perhaps you might have, it'll be quite common for when you go to secondary school that you'll have children from other countries visiting on foreign exchange trips and things like that. And they'll find it very hard to understand local dialects if you use a lot of informal language. That's quite an important time to explain things carefully using formal English. So that's it for this morning's Teaching Live Grammar. We will be back next week for the last Teaching Live Grammar of the term. And just to give you a quick heads up, teachers, we'll put up the sign up for the 10 sessions of Teaching Live Grammar that we're going to do pre-SATs this week. So keep an eye out for that. I'll make sure everybody gets an email so you've got that information, so that I'm going to do 10 quick fire grammar sessions before. You don't, if you think that your class, even if you're not in England and you're not doing SATs, but you think your class could do with 10 short sessions over a short period to boost grammar, then by all means join us. We're not sort of being restrictive to just English schools because they're doing the SATs. Excuse me. So that's it from us this week. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye from me.
We're on to active and passive next time, so sharpen up. Bye, everyone.
Active and passive. So that's even more complicated than the subjunctive pie.
Oh, dear.
So I'll be scratching my head over that one. All right. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.